Let's see. Okay. Hi, you guys. So we're recording. This is a special call for dreamers, doers about how to be your authentic self on camera. And this is one of my favorite topics lately. My name is Elissa Weinzimmer, for those of you that I haven't met. I call myself a voice coach, a presence coach, and I also talk a lot these days. I'm writing a book actually about self-love and femininity and the rise of the feminine, etc. So all of that may very well fall within the scope of what we're talking about today. But specifically, I thought it would be a really, really useful topic, and I'm actually just going to arrange my screen so that my notes are side by side with us. I thought it'd be a really useful and interesting topic to go into, you know, why we get weird on camera, to be perfectly honest. Because in fact, actually, I hope Sarah doesn't mind me sharing this. She sent me an email today and I was like, girl, this is exactly it. It was so perfect. She was asking a question about what we would talk about. Yes, Susie, you can chat me. Oh, I'm recording, Susie. Don't worry. You're amazing. I'm doing it. Thank you. Susie, by the way, is the director of operations of my business, Voice Body Connection. Yay, Susie. Thanks for being here. And yes, thank you for reminding me to record. I love it. Okay. So Sarah said that basically she loves getting her picture taken, but she hates being on video. And yet, we have to do it, you know, there's this expectation that we are the face of our brand as entrepreneurs, and that we'll do, you know, maybe it's Instagram stories is our way of doing things. I like to do that. Or maybe it's Facebook Lives. I do those sometimes, haven't done them in a little while. Online talks, TED Talks, obviously. Sarah's examples were Sizzle Reel, YouTube, etc. And this is my favorite part. And again, Sarah, I hope you don't mind me quoting you on this. She was like, I feel awkward AF on camera. I feel awkward as fuck. I was like, that's so amazing. Because people that I know who even have these super vibrant, super passionate personalities, we get in front of the camera and something goes kind of dead in us. So I want to talk a little bit about my understanding of literally why that happens, and then how we can essentially hack our nervous systems, if you will. And I say that in the most positive of ways so that we can do something differently. I will say this recording will be available. So, you know, you can come back to this, and Susie, if you want to take any big takeaway notes for people, we can maybe put those somewhere too. So here's my argument is I think the biggest thing that stands in the way of being our authentic selves on camera is thinking that we need to be something that we're not. And this usually is happening on a subconscious level, but here's how I like to demonstrate it with my hands. We go into what I will call box mode, where we're I should, and should is always a very operative word in this process. I should fit into this box. As a vocal coach, I hear people literally do it with their voices. They may be walking down the street and go hey girl, how are you? And then get on camera and be like, hey girl, how are you? Do you know what I mean? It becomes we think that our voice needs to be in this box. We think that our energy needs to be a certain way. And as soon as we put ourselves in this should box, if you will, we turn off part of what is making us dynamically and authentically ourselves. Susie and I were literally just talking earlier today about the word authenticity as this buzzword these days, and it's everywhere. And what we're talking about is being really authentic, because of course there's this culture of taking a selfie and being look, I love myself, I'm so amazing, I'm having a great day. But we can always feel on a gut spidey sense level, we can always feel, or I think we can, if there's a there, if you know what I mean. Is something actually underneath that, or is that person actually insecure and doing it out of insecurity and need for attention? So certainly our spidey sense goes off when we, scroll through our news feed on Facebook and we see someone really authentically sharing a message that they're sharing because from their heart they know that it's important. They're creating this business to do something that's going to make an impact on the planet. We can feel the difference of that energy on a vibrational level from the person who's look at me, I have this thing you should buy, right? So how do we be the authentic person, right? And how do we be the authentic person that actually draws people to us? So going back to this box idea, the image that I sometimes get is that we are trying not to be something so that we can do our job. Like, I'm trying not to be, one of the most common ones is I'm trying not to be nervous so I can do my job. I'm trying not to be too, like, you can put too anything in here, because especially for women, we relate to this. Try not to be too loud, too brash. Try not to have too much vocal fry, whatever it is, so that we can, do our job. And the thing is, when you're trying not to be something, you are leaking a certain percentage of your energy, right? You only have, the way percentages actually work, we only have 100% of our energy, which means that if there's a certain part of your mental awareness, your nervous system that is trying not to feel nerves, then let's say it's 30% of you trying not to feel your nerves, or maybe it's 60% of you trying not to feel your nerves, you only have the remaining percentage to show up with and do your job. So actually, I think the biggest answer to the question of how to be authentic on camera is to show up with our whole selves in that moment. Show up with our whole selves truly in this moment. Now, that brought me to the place where I was like, let me show up with my true self authentically in this moment, in this call. Because it's interesting, like I get nervous these days. I speak a lot in front of people. I teach. I do get nervous, but I don't get nervous that often. But actually leading up to this call, I was feeling nerves. I was like, oh gosh, this is one of my favorite communities on the planet, Dreamers, Doers. I love these people. Like, I want to offer something really valuable. And so, and of course I want people to like me. And so like all of that was coming up. And, just to like also share other things that are going on in my life transparently, I've been feeling kind of stressed out for the last couple of days because I made the decision to foster a dog, which is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I've wanted to adopt a dog, and I was like, okay, let me foster, because I'm now in a circumstance where I can. And for the last 2 days, I've been in, oh my God, what have I done? I'm a single mom mode. Like, oh my Lord. Like, I tried to go to yoga the other day and she didn't poop in time, and so I couldn't go to yoga. And I've just like had this kind of level of anxiety, right? Like, there's always, my point is, there's always stuff going on in our lives that, like if we show up, let's say we hired people and we're showing up on a set to film that promotional video, that like, this is a big deal. We've been planning this for a long time. There's always stuff going on in your life that's affecting your ability to relax, that's affecting your ability to feel just fully, happily yourself. And the process is to acknowledge it and feel those things and carry them along with you energetically, as opposed to feel like you have to get rid of them in order to do your job, because it's just not possible. And by the way, I come from the world of theater, as does Susie, the world of acting. And I have said this so many times to my voice students, my acting students in the theater world. You cannot step on stage to do Hamilton and be like, if you, like, you may one day have had a New York Times interview and be totally elated and step on stage with that energy, but then you can't expect that, the day that you get a bad phone call about something going on, that you won't step on stage with that energy too. We bring it on stage and we do our job, not in spite of the circumstances, but with the circumstances, right, that are going on. And what that means is that we're being fully present, which means that we will appear fully present. And we can redirect what we're paying attention to in any given moment. But when we try to shut down a portion of what we're present with, we shut down a portion of our presence, really simply. Does anyone else want to share like the real about your life? Or really, I guess my big question and the sharing that I wanted to do, and I'm so appreciative that Sarah sent that she sent that email to me, because, she shared. Does anyone want to share about like your challenges or questions or issues around this? I guess I'll be like, Olga, do you want to share? Go ahead.
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, if you, and like you said, there's always stuff going on, and maybe you're having disagreement with your business partner or your a client is not paying you on time, or whatever it is that's like maybe stressing you in the moment, and you have to give a presentation. One thing that I've heard a coach give advice how to handle that situation is to say, okay, I'm feeling frustrated because my invoice is not paid on time. But I'm willing to set that aside so that I can be fully present for this presentation that I'm giving, or this difficult conversation that I'm having, and so on and so forth. But you're saying to acknowledge it and to be present with it, not push it aside, but to kind of.
Yeah, I think so, because
you explain a little bit more, I guess that's.
Yeah. So the way the human brain works, and actually we'll talk more about this in a second, but the way the human brain works is we can actually hold a lot of things in our awareness at the same time, right? Like, let's just say, for instance, that we're driving and we're playing with the dial on the radio, and we're also picking up our Starbucks cup every couple seconds, and we're having a conversation, hopefully not on the phone, but or maybe we are. And we're doing all these things, we're managing all these things at the same time. In this scenario, the ideal situation is that your actual attention and presence is on the road and what is happening with the wheel and your steering, etc. But all these parallel processes that you don't need to attend to as fully are going on at the same time. And that's the way the human brain works, that we can do that. And the way we can do that is by prioritizing what we're paying attention to, and letting all the rest of it be a parallel process. So essentially, the idea is that multitasking is actually a fallacy. Even though I just described multitasking, what you're actually doing is monotasking where your attention is in quick succession. And then the stuff that's happening at the same time is not requiring, there's deeper parts of your brainstem that are regulating it, so it's not requiring your active attention. So essentially, it's a very subtle shift, but what I'm suggesting is, yes, like what the coach said about setting it aside, and to some degree we could probably be saying the same thing, but I just like to be really careful with the language, because the language really affects your mindset around it. There's this concept in theater, again, in improv, which is yes and. So it would be like yes, I am frustrated by the fact that the client hasn't paid the invoice, and also I can show up and do this presentation right now. Do you know what I mean? It's yes anding the situation. It's letting yourself feel the frustration, because, and this has implications on so many levels, including for our health, when we try to shove things down and be like, that's not an issue, I'm setting it aside, I'm compartmentalizing it. What we're actually doing on a somatic embodied level is like shoving it into some of the tissues of our body, where it gets stored until it is ever given an opportunity to come out later. And if it's not given an opportunity to come out later, it's going to start fighting its way out at some point, So I'm getting pretty holistic with that interpretation of it. But on a practical level, at any given moment, to take a breath and let yourself feel the frustration of that situation with your client, and then move forward into the presentation, is, I think, more proactive and will help you show up as your full self more genuinely than being like, I have to stop feeling those feelings because those feelings have no place in my presentation, which really just stifles you on an energetic level, right? So for instance, when I was sort of having this like, oh, I'm sort of nervous about this call, and also like, oh my gosh, I have to put the dog in her crate to go across the street to the co-working space and, set up for the call and everything, I was like, okay, I'm going to feel all these things. Like I got to practice what I preach, right? So I feel all these things. And of course, if you have the outlet to express it, I think that's, like you said, Olga, really valuable to, have the moment to be like, this is the way I feel, because that's another huge part of our lives, and especially being women in this world, is that we don't give ourselves space to actually identify what we're feeling. So all of this, so much of it happens on a subconscious level. Susie, do you want to add anything to that? You just have to unmute yourself.
I feel like I have a question formulating, but I'm having trouble articulating it.
It's
kind of back to the box idea.
Yeah.
So how much of that box do you believe, put on by the individual versus put on by society, and what you think you're supposed to be, or what people think of you?
Oh my gosh. That is such a good question. I mean, so much of it is society. So much of it is society. The word that comes up for me so much lately is script, which is like all these scripts that we've learned in society around how we're supposed to behave and what, you know, we like literally will just see someone else's promo video and be like, oh, that's a good promo video. And suddenly, because our brains actually, this is so similar to what we're saying about the parallel processes, our brain's just trying to like figure everything out and put it into habits, basically, so that we don't have to think consciously about things and we can just do them. So our brain will look at that amazing promo video from like, you know, Lola tampons and be like, oh my God, I want my company to have a promo video like that. And suddenly, ding, 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 we have a script of what a good promo video looks like and what a bad promo video could be too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and just to like challenge our assumptions as they come up and be like, is that actually, you know, is that actually the way that things should look? Basically, I think anytime we hear ourselves thinking the word should or supposed to, there's some script at play that is a society thing. But of course, you know, it's us too, because we internalize it. So, yeah, there's no like simple answer to that question, but it's such a good question.
That definitely answers. That's interesting.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so the thing that I actually wanted to cover during this time today, like concrete things I want to offer you are a mindset system and then a exercise you can do. So first of all, I want to talk about nervousness because as we talked about, it's a huge part of the reason that things shift and we don't show up as our most authentic, dynamic, beautiful selves on camera or in front of people on a TED stage or whatever it is. So one thing to think about is that this is very primal. If you think about zebras on the savannah, right? Like let's say you're a zebra on the savannah and there's lions, right? There's two groups of lions. One group of lions is over on one side and they're sunning themselves, chilling out, having a good old lion time. Like they're pretty far away. And then another group of lions is a similar distance away, but they're up on their haunches looking at you. You automatically, as Mr. or Mrs. Zebra, pay attention to the lions on their haunches looking at you. And the reason for that is very simple. If they start bounding towards you, you might be dinner, right? So you need to pay attention on a primal level. When someone is looking at us, it activates our nervous system. And that's a survival instinct. So there's this exercise that I learned back when I was first starting to teach voice. I was doing a certification in something called Fitzmaurice voice work. And I learned this exercise that I still do with groups of people and encourage people to find a way to do for themselves. It requires a group or at least two people. It's called I Want You to Look at Me. And what you do is you stand totally neutral and you say to the person or people across from you, I want you to look at me. And they'll have been looking away from you and then they turn and they look at you. And what happens is you can feel literally in that moment what your nervous system does. Like what is your unique nervous system's activation when people are looking at you? Because everyone's is a little bit different. Some people are a lot more sensitive than other people. Some people have had more practice and are able to stay in sort of more what we would call stay and play mode with their nervous system, where they're like, this is fun, no problem. And some people go straight into fight or flight, right? So if you literally like strip away the I'm giving a presentation, strip away the I'm doing a Facebook Live or I'm talking on Instagram story or whatever it is, if you literally just strip it down to the act of someone looking at you and seeing what happens, people start to fidget. I mean, I've done this with hundreds of people, right? Some people's bodies start to twist side to side. Some people start to sway, like shift their weight. Some people start to fidget their fingers or their toes. Lots of people get sweaty palms. Eyes can widen. Like there's all these different systems that literally are just hardwired to activate in that situation. And as soon as you actually know what your individual makeup is, like what happens to me when someone looks at me, you might be like, oh gosh, I'm actually really sensitive. Like I'm actually a really sensitive person. No wonder when I press play or record on the Instagram story, like I just start stumbling all over my words and I'm like, you know, like this doesn't feel natural, because just the perceived idea of someone looking at me sends my nervous system into a literally different state. I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday, and he was actually my mentor in grad school when I was up in grad school in Canada. And he said that the group of actors who he's been working with are opening a show last night, and we were lamenting about the fact that even though he's done all of this good like accent, dialect, breath support work with them in the show, that like it might totally go away on opening night. And I haven't followed up to ask him how it went, but the reason things change on opening night, the reason things change when you actually get up on the TED stage or when you press play, is because there's literally a surge of adrenaline, cortisol, like all of these stress hormones, all of these fight or flight hormones. And so that all of us have had that sensation in our lives where under certain circumstances, when people are looking at you, everything suddenly feels different, operates differently, your voice comes out differently, everything. Yeah, and that's just literally biological, right? So the system I want to share is something called the 3 circles of energy, and it comes from a British voice teacher named Patsy Rodenberg. And Patsy Rodenberg is, she's probably like in her 60s, I would guess. She's got decades of teaching under her belt, and she's brilliant and leads certifications herself and everything. She wrote this book called The Second Circle. And the concept in this book is the thing I'm going to share with you. So I like to refer to it as the 3 circles of energy because there's first, second, and third circle. And these are states of energy, circles of energy, she calls them, that describe how we're behaving in any given moment in relationship to the outside world. So first circle is the circle of withdrawing or withholding your energy. When you're in first circle, you're literally more concerned with yourself than you are with the outside world. So when I'm in first circle, well, let's put it this way. When I'm on the subway, I'm probably in first circle, right? It's actually literally the socially acceptable way to behave in that circumstance is to, if you will, kind of be in your own bubble with your energy staying inside. You're definitely withdrawing from the outside world. I'm going to skip over second circle for one moment, just because third circle is the opposite. If first circle is the circle of withdrawing or withholding your energy, third circle is the circle of pushing or forcing your energy. It is when you're actually more concerned with the outside world than you are with yourself. And when I say concerned, I don't necessarily mean like worried. I just mean literally concerning yourself with the outside world, right? So this is the energy of one example that I think is actually a very good one for this is when you go into a restaurant or anyone really working in a customer service industry who goes, "Hi, how are you? Can I take your order?" And they say it in this sort of like fake, not really their way. And you're like, oh, okay. They literally just do this all day. They say these words all day. They're in rote mode. They didn't really ask me how I am, right? The person at Dwayne Reed selling you your toothpaste, same thing, right? So third circle is this pushing or forcing, like making it happen energy. So basically like on a literal physical level, first circle is pulling back, third circle is pushing, right? As you can now imagine, second circle is the space in between. Second circle is I am letting a flow happen, a give and take of energy in and out. I am present both with myself and the outside world, ideally as equally as possible, although of course that's a flow. And I'm allowing myself to really, it's what we were talking about before, really be present with all aspects of the experience that is me in the world right now. So second circle is obviously ideal in most circumstances. It's our goal. But the thing is, first and third circle aren't evil. They're selective forms of presence that we developed because we needed them, right? So first circle, like we said, is the socially acceptable way to behave on the subway. It would be kind of weird to be on the subway trying to have conversations with everyone. It's just like, it's literally what happens to a group of people when we get smushed together that close in a circumstance like that, right? And third circle, like having worked plenty of customer service jobs in my time, I can say it saves you some energy, or at least it feels like it does at a certain point. It's like, oh my God, I've done this 100,000 times. Let me just, not really truly show up in this moment and ask this family. I worked at a museum for a long time in Los Angeles at the Skirball Cultural Center. Let me like interact with this family in the way that I know works to conserve my own energy, you know? So yeah, do those 3 circles of energy make sense? Do they like intuitively sort of hit you? Yeah, go ahead, Olga.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that the second circle kind of plays out differently for introverts versus extroverts?
Ooh, such a good question. Such a good question. So it would be really tempting to map this system onto a personality system like introversion and extroversion, but it doesn't actually completely correspond. Because all three circles are things that all of us move through all day long, every day. Like let's say, for instance, that you were on the subway in first circle, but then you saw someone that you know and you go, oh my gosh, hi, this is amazing. It's so good to see you. But then someone tries to butt into the conversation. You're like, hey, please. And that becomes a little bit third circle. Like, so you can literally go through the circles of energy quite quickly in succession. So it's essentially, yes, I think in answer to your question, yes, it can affect the way you move through the circles, but it doesn't map, it's not the same system, right? So like an introvert, for instance, might classically spend more time in first circle, but then actually in presentation situations might have a habit of going into third because they overcompensate. And they're like, oh my goodness, I really want to be good in this presentation or on this video. So I sort of start spewing words and I start, going through stuff in a way that's pushed and disconnected in that fashion, right? As an extrovert, I mean, something that I have witnessed in myself as an extrovert and someone who spends more time in third circle than first is an extrovert might literally just spend more time in third circle, and their challenge might be to go into shifting into I'm truly genuinely here mode instead of that energy of like making it happen or pushing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. But I also feel like the way that the second circle may manifest in an introvert may be different than in an extrovert. Like if we're saying that the second circle is the balance between kind of being within and without, like I feel like if you're an introvert, it's like a quieter version, right? Like that balance for you is maybe shifted more towards the withdrawing.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a beautiful point as well, because I like to think of the whole thing as a Venn diagram, but on the Venn diagram, the first and third parts are like the slivers way on the side, and second circle is this huge vast space where there's mostly circle there. Like there's lots of capacity. So one thing that happens, and this is actually a really important thing to excavate from our assumptions in our mind, is that we often think that being present means being calm, because mindfulness and meditation and all those things have sort of allowed us to associate those two things together. You do not have to be calm to be present. For instance, like let's say someone's the like movie or play that always comes to mind is August Osage County, where like Meryl Streep and the whole family are all just angry and yelling at each other the whole time. Those scenes don't require an actor to be calm. Like they can be present and not calm. You can be shouting, So there are myriad states of ways to be while being in second circle. Absolutely. And I think that's what's so important too, because then it allows us to celebrate the diversity of our nervous systems is what it really is. That, some people more naturally take to being on camera, but there is this quality of being in second circle that is what the camera is actually capturing in whoever it is, right? So, and another way to think about it, I think I had another thought that came and passed too quickly, so if it comes back to me, I'll come to it. But the next thing that's coming up is this idea of bubbles, because bubbles are actually something that we understand intuitively in our lives. Like let's say, so by the way, just to update you, I'm currently living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because I wanted to get out of New York and I had an opportunity here to kind of be supported while I work on my book. So it's not as common here out on the street, but I'm thinking back to New York. If you're having a good day and you're walking down, 6th Avenue in New York, people walk around you, they give you space. Like there's this sort of bubble thing that happens where your expansive vibration and energy on that day allows people to give you space. Whereas if you're having a bad day and your energy is shrinking, people might be bumping into you, right? we actually understand how to shift our bubbles intuitively as humans. And being in second circle requires shifting our bubble. So maybe the most concrete takeaway I can give you from this call is that when you pick up your phone to do your Instagram story, you have to ask yourself, am I in second circle with my phone? Right? Is it part of my bubble? If it's not part of your bubble, if literally only you is your bubble, then you're in first circle. If your bubble's smaller than the phone, or even includes the phone, but you're blasting past that, you're in third circle. And if you're truly talking to the phone, like you would be talking to a human, which that's another thing for us to address, is how to treat an inanimate object like a person. But if you're truly talking to your phone like it's a person, then you are so much more likely to be in this state that actually feels connected to the person on the other side receiving that transmission. Is there anything else you would say about that, Olga?
No, that's great. And I love your connection that you're making between presence and like feeling connected to somebody.
Yeah. Because that's literally another, actually, so Susie and I have just been like going back and forth about language and how to describe things today, because I literally am releasing right now an online course about all this stuff. And so one thing that we were saying is that we have to define presence. Like, what is presence? Because that is, we all have a lot of assumptions around it. Like, for instance, when I was a kid, I did a lot of plays, and people would come up to me and they would be like, oh my God, you have so much presence on stage. Like, I just can't stop looking at you. You're smiling so big. And in fairness, I was probably third circling the shit out of most of those plays that I was doing. But there probably was some genuine second circle stuff going on as well. And, people would come up and they would say that to me. And it really, like, maybe that's the reason I'm sitting here in front of you today, is because I really, like, as a kid was curious. I was like, what do I have that the other kids don't have? Like, we're all working hard. Like, we're having a fabulous fun time on stage. Like, why are people looking at me? And it made me literally, and this is the way my brain works, is that I want to figure out, how, like, the answer to something. It's like, what's going on? Because it doesn't make sense to me that I have something that other people don't have. And that's exactly it. I don't. Now, do I, maybe with my own particular makeup and set of skills / challenges of tending to go into third circle more than first, does that make me a little bit more inclined to be the type of person who's going to turn on Instagram story and talk about my life and my business? Sure. But we all have the capacity to be present, because what is presence? Presence is, like you said, Olga, it's connection. Presence is literally allowing yourself to be there with yourself and the outside world, right? And we're all good at it. Like, even the kids, the people who were punished in school, let's say, for being the kid who daydreamed in class or was like staring out the window looking at a leaf, that kid was present with the leaf. Sure, he wasn't present with his teacher, which is what he was supposed to be doing, quote unquote, script right there. But he's present with the leaf. Like, we all know that Einstein was a terrible student, but freaking genius. We all know how to be present with the things that are important to us. We've all had truly present, intimate conversations with many people in our lives. And it's just about extending that quality of energy, however it shows up for us, just like you make that point, Olga. Whatever quality it shows up for us, extending that to the moment where we're talking about our business and actually the camera is rolling. Oh my gosh, it was that same thought and it came again and then it went again. Oh, I know it's important. It's going to come back a third time. Okay, another fun way to think about this. So 2 specific questions that I get as a voice and presence coach is, okay, so how do I be loud enough, right? Like, or am I being too loud? Like, am I a loud talker? In order to regulate your volume, you just want to be really specific about what's in your bubble. So, yeah, okay, other question, how do I be present with an inanimate object? Basically, you use your imagination is the simple answer. You picture your best friend on the other side of the camera, right? That's what I always say. There was a period of time where I was working with a lot of university professors who were recording online courses. And, they were used to being in lecture halls, but they weren't used to being in front of a camera. And I would literally spend some time with them being like, okay, talk to me about your favorite student. Who's one of your favorite people that has ever taken your class? And then when we would be between takes, I would go, did Angel get that? And, you know, Professor Rubin would be like, actually, I don't think she did. Can we do it again? I was like, sure. So we literally were just like talking to the camera as if the camera were, you know, Professor Rubin's favorite student, Angel. So that's one way to do it. But whether the bubble is you and your phone in your hand, or it's you and a you know, God willing, theater full of 400 people listening to your TED Talk, it's just about being really clear about what your bubble includes, making sure it includes your entire audience, and letting your energy, your conscious awareness be part of that bubble, because where your energy goes, your voice will flow, right? And that's really all that it takes to regulate your volume. And then if you're Beyonce and you're in Barclays, then we just have jumbotrons and, you know, sound equipment to augment it, because obviously a human being can't do that. But the reason people show up to see Beyonce is because she's still doing it anyway. On an energetic vibrational level, people are paying for the nosebleed seats and going in person, because there's literally this vibration coming from the stage because you are in her bubble. You know, that's why we pay to do that. So, so that's a good way to think about volume. And a good way to think about pace, because that's a big question too. A lot of us talk too fast. Not too many of us talk too slow, but that could be a thing. A good way to think about pace is leaving the did you get that moment. So the did you get that moment, which when you're on camera, you basically have to imagine, is the space for your audience to digest what you said. And you can literally practice. If you're practicing a speech with a friend, you can literally practice and do the did you get that exercise. And the way that I like to do that exercise is that, like, let's say someone's working on a speech, I'll have them go one sentence, one thought at a time. And I will literally out loud as their coach respond and go, uh-huh, or cool, or whatever my response is to what they said, so that we can literally feel the pace of, oh, that's how long it takes for the human being on the other side to digest what you're saying. Because of course, what is talking too fast? Talking too fast is third circle. It's blah, 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 spew. It's pushing, forcing your message. Now, the reason I think that these 3 circles of energy are so valuable, because truly, I mean, I've been sharing this stuff for like a decade. Actually, I learned it in my teacher training a decade ago, this Fitzmaurice training I mentioned to you. The reason it blew my mind, and I keep researching it and thinking about it and sharing it, and you'll probably, now that you've learned it, see it in action all around the world as you go back into your life after this call. The reason I think it's so valuable is because when we have a system for understanding how things function, we can take the judgment out of it and just shift and reprogram. So instead of, oh my God, I'm so bad at public speaking because I'm too quiet, or I talk way too fast, or my face goes dead, like I become expressionless, or whatever your habit or thing is, instead of labeling ourselves as that, what that actually is a quality of energy showing up in you, triggering your nervous system to go into a different state than the state where you're most vibrant and present. And when we have the mechanics to understand why that's happening, then we also have the mechanics and the formula to shift. So to talk a little bit about the shift, you may be able to tell from the way I described first and third circle. First circle's with withholding, third circle's pushing. Second circle is in the middle. What this means is you can't do your way into second circle. You cannot, if you pull back what you've been doing, like let's say you're too loud and you pull back, you're in first circle. And then if you try to get louder again, you push, you're in third circle. If you do, you are going to ping pong back and forth between the extreme circles of energy. The only way to get to the second circle is to shift, allow, let go, be your way into that state of being. And there's actually a little, and this will tie into the exercise that we're going to do. There's actually a little experiment that I like to do to embody this. So take your hands and put them in fists like this. And I won't do this along with you guys just because then I would give it away. But I'll count to 3. And on the count of 3, I want you to let go of your fists, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's tricky, right? It's like, what do you do? So some people will sometimes go like this, which is not letting go. That's another form of doing, right? Yeah, I see you actually like playing with it and being like, what is letting go? What is letting go? My argument would be that letting go looks something like this, or even it could literally be that you just let your whole arm drop, right? Because you've actually engaged the entire arm. So if you really let everything go that's working, aside from the stuff that's holding you up in your seat or allowing you to stand, then, right? Another experience of letting go that I've had that I think was just a really fun way of demonstrating it is one time a couple years ago, I wanted to try one of those flotation tanks, you know, like the deprivation tanks. And so I went in, and the thing is, you're floating in about 2 feet of really, really buoyant, salty water. And I know that I hold a lot of tension in my neck and my hips, right? A lot of us do. So I was like, I'm trying to release my neck and my hips, and there's no boundaries, right? So I'm like trying to release my neck, and my head goes like this. And I was like, oh, that wasn't letting go. That was like shooting my neck back through the water in space. Like that was obviously doing something. And then, you know, and this often happens when we stop trying so hard that a couple minutes later, my neck went like, and settled, right? Same thing with my leg, like with my hips. I tried to let go of my hips and my leg went shooting through the water. And then a couple minutes later, I felt my hips go, right? So letting go is not a doing. Letting go is letting go. And the exercise that I wanted to do today, that I wanted to offer to you, it's actually funny. It's all happening at the same time. I literally released a video about it yesterday. So I guess, Susie, we can totally share the video that the newsletter had yesterday, because it's the exercise we're about to do. But it is a teaching your body what it feels like to let go exercise, and it's a breathing exercise. So sit up nice and tall. I just arranged myself on my seat so I would be a little bit more supported. So what we're going to do is a tense and release exercise, and I'm actually going to do just a really simple version of it, and then I'll send you the video if you want to do the full, 10-minute version of it. But essentially, when we go into fight or flight, when we get nervous, very often our body goes and takes a breath and goes into this pattern of tension on an inhalation, and then it releases, like it's waiting to release on an exhalation. But the problem, and the reason that we never feel settled while we're doing the talking on the presentation or the Instagram story or whatever it is because we have to work on the exhalation too, because that's when you talk on an exhalation. So if you go and then start talking, and then take another breath and then keep talking, that's why you get to that state where you're like, oh my God, I can't even feel my feet on the ground. Where am I? This is crazy, right? So what this is going to teach our body is how to release on our inhalation, which is our only chance to release when we're talking continuously. It's going to teach us how to let go and allow our body to be breathed by the environment rather than us needing to take a breath, right? So tense your whole body, squeeze your whole body in, but breathe out. And then let all the muscles in your body go, sort of like we did with our hands, and let your body breathe in. And what you'll find is, even though this feels backwards, because it's literally backwards from the way our body is hardwired, what you'll find is that the movement of expansion breathes you, there's a mechanical reason for it. Literally, your lungs are recoiling and expanding and getting more open. And as long as the airway is open, the air will want to come in to equalize the pressure. Really simple. So do it a couple more times. Squeeze and breathe out. Expand and let the breath come in. Gorgeous. Squeeze and breathe out. Expand and let the breath come in. And then actually, let's combine this with Amy Cuddy's power posing. Has anyone seen that TED Talk? I love it. She basically says that, if you stand in like a starfish pose, I call it, or like a Wonder Woman pose or whatever it is, if you stand in a pose like that for 2 minutes, that your adrenaline and cortisol will go down and your testosterone will go up, so you'll feel more powerful. But we're going to combine this breathing with the Amy Cuddy power posing. So squeeze, get small, breathe out. And then starfish power pose, let your breath come in. It feels so good. Squeeze and breathe out. Expand, let your breath come in. Couple more times just so our body can really calibrate to this. Squeeze and breathe out. Expand, let your breath come in. Last time, squeeze and breathe out. And expand, let your breath come in. Amazing, gorgeous, so nice. Let that go. Can you feel that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say anything about it, Olga?
No, that's it definitely feels more expansive and less effortful.
Yeah, and that's it. That's it. When we are not appearing as our present, most vibrant selves on the camera, it's because there's some part of us that's doing too much work. Which the too much work is either going to be a version of pulling back or pushing, which is going to get us into first or third circle, which is going to make us feel like some weird robot version of ourselves. So this is on a physical level, the way, I think, the best way I know to share with you, to literally feel what it feels like to expansively become present. To like literally in every cell of your body become your best self. And so what I actually tell people to do, and I created this actually back in the day with those presenters that I was working with at the University of Alberta. What I would have them do every single take, every time before, the director called action, I would do a very simple version of what we just did. Breathe out, paste a smile on your face, which this corresponds to Amy Cuddy's thing of fake it till you become it. So paste a smile on your face and breathe in with that expansive feeling. And then start from there. And what that meant was every time the director went into action, even if it was sort of faked until we became it, there was this person who was smiling and expansively open and present already in that state of energy, which then means like you got to set yourself up it's not very easy to shift into second circle if you're off to the races in third, right? So it's about setting yourself up and realizing that your state of energy is the most important thing. And it's so easy, especially when we're memorizing a script or we're like, oh my God, I have to remember to say that thing or whatever it is. It's so easy for us to get caught up in the details of the left brain stuff we have to remember. I should do this on this side of my brain. Instead of realize that in that moment right before we perform, whether it's in front of the camera, whether it's on stage, wherever it is, if we can shift over to the most important thing and the only thing, because I can only monotask in quick succession. So the most important thing that I can possibly drop into my brain in this very moment in time is state of energy presence, right? If we start in the state of energy presence, then A, people will like us more because it's really us. And B, that is the place from which we can remember all the things we need to remember anyway. That is the place from which the stuff that you already know will flow. Yay. So I thought this was, perfect timing to have this conversation today. And it's so valuable to me because, this, like I mentioned, I'm working on this new class, which is called How to Have Presence. And as I start sharing it with people, I was like, this is so fun to just have some conversations around these issues that really affect us so much. And that I think, I want to have more of these conversations so I can hear what's going on in other people's heads, because what is coming up for me, what I'm realizing, and the reason I feel a sense of pride and excitement about the work that I get to do on the planet is because it just feels like it's addressing these subterranean beliefs and limitations that we as especially female entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are minorities put on ourselves, these expectations that limit our ability to really share our message, And so, it feels like we've tapped into something here. And what I will share with you, both you who are on the call at this moment and also anyone watching the recording later is I certainly wanted to extend to you a deal on the course because it's literally just become available. And I'm actually doing a deal with my mailing list right now where I offered $50 off the course, which, by the way, I think I've priced it at a very reasonable price. It's $199. So basically right now it's $149. I just want people to have access to this information. I'd rather it reach more people. So anyhow, if you guys want the course for $149, I would be delighted to offer it to you. And I'd really be delighted to hear, you know, how it's working for you and like go back and forth and offer you extra support if you have any questions. Because I'm just kind of figuring out what in it resonates with people as well. So I created a coupon code, which I'll have to ask Geisha the best way to share this. Probably the best way is just to put it on that thread in Dreamers Doers. But there's a coupon code that I created, which is DDHTHP, which stands for How to Have Presence Launch. I'll write it down. It's all capital letters, the two letters D, HTHP, launch. And if you go to howtohavepresence.com, which is where you can enroll in the class, and then if you're going to purchase and click through and enter that coupon code, you'll get the $50 off. And I'll leave that active. I was thinking until, Susie, can I leave that active until, like, I was thinking April 15th, but maybe I can even leave it active until the end of April. I don't know. I want to give people a chance if they're watching this video later. She's like, business brain pops in. Okay, we'll stick with April 15th. We'll stick with April 15th. That's totally fine. If you're watching this before April 15th, that code will be available to you, DDHTHP launch. Yay, good. Okay, so that's my offer to you guys at the end of the call. And of course, since I know a lot of people will be watching this recording, this is the next stage of how to have presence, is how to be present with people who are like, you know, across time and space. But I feel that you are here, and I want you to know that I'm really grateful that you've been watching this. And if you have any questions for me, then I would love to hear from you. You can also post on the Facebook thread or send me an email at elissa@voicebodyconnection.com. Do we have any remaining stuff we want to say as a group before we finish up this call? I know I'm feeling so perfectly on time. I'm proud of myself. There, and Olga's like, yes, you respected my time. Thank you. Anything else you would, either of you would say?
No, I wanted to say thank you. That definitely connected some dots for me that I guess weren't there before. I've always, you know, as a student of meditation and also as an introvert, I've always associated presence as just being with myself rather than being like in equal parts myself and engaged with the world. So that's connected some dots for me.
I love it. And there's so much, I mean, I'm a meditator too, so I get that. And there's so much contradictory language really out there about like mindfulness and presence and everything. Because of course, like I absolutely think that like basically in this framework, I would argue there's a reason for diving deeply inward in First Circle. There's a lot of value in that. In fact, part of the reason I'm living in Tulsa, Oklahoma right now is so that I can kind of First Circle myself, you know? That's cool to hear that lands with you that way, Olga, because it's being present with yourself and the outside world at the same time and allowing all of that to be true. I think that's full presence. And I think that's what comes across inauthentically when someone's doing, I keep using the example of an Instagram story, is that on some level we're cutting ourselves off from the audience, but then spewing at the audience. And so there's this like lack of authenticity that starts feeling like it's there. Like there's this imaginary wall that we can feel that just doesn't feel truthful. Cool. And Olga, can you share too, I don't remember exactly what your business is or what your work is.
Yeah, so I do consulting work for startups. So I work with startups in strategy, operations, and fundraising. And I've definitely been working on kind of, I guess, including building out my influencing skills, which is also tying into kind of the being present with yourself and your advice and strategy and how it relates to where people are. So like being connected both inside and outside.
I love that. I love that. There's just clearly, you know, we could argue that we live in this information age, and there's clearly so many people with such good curated content, because that's really the name of the game at this stage of the world, this globalized world, is instead of it, like, we don't need more information, we need good information. And so, we could quote like the Marianne Williamson quote, which is like, who are you to play small, because someone needs your ideas. And if this delivery stuff, if this present stuff is really the only thing standing in the way of you helping someone who really needs your ideas, then oh my gosh, like, please. And I'm here to, support in whatever way, even just by providing the mindset and the tools to help us leap over those things. So cool. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting a wonderful workshop.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. And thank you to everyone who's watched this recording. And I will look forward to interacting with you in DD. Amazing. Bye.
Yeah.